If you're an 80s child like me, without a shadow of a doubt, you remember the sex guru, Dr. Ruth.
Very often, I do immediately interrupt and I say, do you use contraceptives?
Uh-huh.
And I like when, are you using contraceptives? What I do like, I tell you, David,
Yes,
what I do
but only at parties.
Dr. Ruth Westheimer was an 80s phenomenon. She was a one-time radio talk show host and author, but she really shined on television. She talked and educated America about sex while looking like somebody's grandma who baked cookies and was super positive about anything she was approached to talk about or question about. One minute she's talking about vibrators, and the next on being a grandparent versus a parent.
The first thing I've learned is that I have to keep my mouth shut.
Exactly right.
With my children, I could scream sometimes and I could discipline, and there are many things that I could do. With grandchildren, you have to be very careful. You have to know these are not your children. These are your children's children.
That's right.
You can spoil, but you have to check with your children. Don't call at dinner time. You know, with my children, I could call any time.
That's right.
I could do many things. Here, there is another element. And it's very important to be in a good relationship with your children, with your daughter-in-law or son-in-law. What is it in your case?
It would be a son-in-law and a daughter.
All right.
Yeah.
So it's very important to show the delight, but it's also very nice. I don't have to discipline. I don't have to worry about what they eat. All I can do is the pleasure.
And when they
She was a big get for talk shows. That was her on Late Night with Tom Snyder.
Thank you for joining us, Dr. Ruth.
Thank
It's
you.
always a joy to see you, Dr. Ruth Westheimer. Her newest book is called Grandparenthood. If you're on the verge of that or you're immersed in that, you will find this very, very entertaining.
Dr. Ruth appeared on the biggest shows like Letterman.
But I tell you, I do talk very explicitly, but I do think that the reason we don't get crank calls, even so 85,300 people are listening, 85,300 people, is because there is really a tremendous amount of need for this kind of sexual literacy. And calling and talking about intercourse and talking about foreplay and about a penis and a vagina.
I'm being silly. I'm being silly.
That's all right.
No, I'm being silly, and we'll just get on with this. I knew it had to happen, and I was just.
She was a guest on Arsenio Hall. Heck, she did The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson.
Is that because of our upbringing, our
Yes.
cultural patterns?
And part of what I am doing on my radio program is to try to bring about some sexual literacy, which would mean that the way you can talk about reading, writing, arithmetic, you can also talk about sex.
Right.
And if you do it in good taste.
The king of late night not only interviewed her, but he also played Dr. Ruth in a
You're
skit.
such a tiny lady.
Shortness in itself should never detract from a healthy sexual life.
At the height of her popularity in the 1980s, she had a syndicated radio and television call-in show.
Thank you very much. I agree with you.
But the one that stood out the most made me wonder, what's Grandma doing with Ozzy? Yep, Ozzy Osbourne was one of her guests in 1986.
I tell you something. First of all, at home, I don't talk much about sex. I'm not saying I'm not doing it, but I don't talk about it because I talk about it all day long. So at home, I want to talk about literature and philosophy and other things.
But the appearance that pleased me the most was her guest spot on Max Headroom.
That special moment.
For a couple of years, I loved Max, the computer-generated TV presenter.
When the band strikes up my specially written theme tune for my first guest. Take it away, boys.
Come down, a little bit nearer. Even a little further. Hello, Max.
I can't go down on you.
Max, you know?
Yeah?
You know that with me,
Yeah?
this was already one that you have to be very careful with me. Because, Max, I'm going to ask you some questions.
Closed! Mr. Fräulein, how are you? You know, Duck, you and I have something in common because on my show, I was very open and explicit about it.
Yes.
And I gave some sound advice about it.
Yes.
And I think you know what it
But I hope.
What is it? What is it?
You, Max,
What is
I hope that you're going to leave the advice about those things about sex to me. Don't you meddle in
6
my...
pieces of advice? No.
Max, don't you meddle in my business, because watch out. Because I have a question for you. How can you masturbate without hands?
And yes, SNL did parody Dr. Ruth.
Dr. Ruth Westheimer.
I must begin by telling you I don't know anything about politics. All I know about is sex. Actually, I don't know much about sex either, but I know what I like.
Dr. Ruth Westheimer's Frank Talk revolutionized sex talk. She escaped Nazi Germany in the 1930s, became an orphan at age 10, a survivor of the Holocaust before eventually coming to America in 1956. The pint-sized star, only 4'7", had a giant stature when discussing the facts of life thanks to her frankness and quick wit, helping to promote the use of contraceptives and educating fans on the risks and dangers of sexually transmitted diseases.
But you have changed sex for America.
I do.
You have changed sex. It's not the same thing anymore.
Don't you tell me that it's less good now.
No, it's better now. Everyone knows it. Now it's like a sport. Now people suit up for the game. People...
She is survived by her 2 adult children and 4 grown grandchildren. Dr. Ruth Westheimer died at her home in Manhattan. She was 96.